So can I get you to kind of introduce this? And I also want to talk about what are the alternatives to this? Because as you know, I've used synths for 25 plus years. We know about. So I actually tried to start working out what are all the interaction methods that we have with synthesizers, and that we have knobs and sliders and buttons. We have sticks. You think of the Nord lead has sticks and benders. We have
do XY pads count?
yes, they do. Yeah, pads count.
Yeah.
We have breath. There is breath in the DX7. We have gyros, which I assume is part of this as well. Some synths, you can pick them up and tilt them and stuff somewhat amusingly or to limit. We have IR sensors, the D-beam from Roland. We all remember that is, not a product, not a thing that is in Roland synths anymore, but was a thing that let you kind of move your hand. I think we have tracking cameras. That's like another aspect where we can use cameras. We use and things that feels like come under the gyro thing. And then there are the sort of weird, esoteric kind of handmade things like there's Laurie Anderson doing drum dance where she's like hitting her body and jumping around. It's connected to like a Lindrum it was not an 808 apparently. But she did that by breaking out all of the sensors and making it so she could hit her body. And then the other one, which I was like, oh my goodness, is the theremin, which feels, and I want to ask you about all of those. Can you, in just a nutshell, summarize the sort of state of the union and what you think is successful and not successful about those interaction methods? Because I think that then leads to the question of what is this offering that those do not?
So I think where I'd start is just to say that just by listing all of those, it shows that there's just a great hunger for people to find new ways to control music. And they want to find things that are innovative and different and experimental. And often people are using systems that are designed for one thing, but they're quite often in music technology, whether it's like scratching turntables or distorting amplifiers, we're misusing technology to get a cool effect.
That's right.
And I think that's where you get this range of different sort of people trying to find different adventures in music control. But in terms of gesture, I think going back, the sort of theremin is quite a good sort of initial example of where that was a sort of expressive way of controlling music. There's no way that what we're doing with the gloves is the beginning of that, like step two of the theremin. There's lots of people who've experimented with gesture control of music in the meantime. I think we've tried to take this idea and make it something that people can access and use in a way that's expressive and interesting. And I think for me that in terms of where we are, so I think there's a big issue now where we have a problem with sort of what I call transparency in performance, right? So when I go and see a band, like I love all of the instruments and everything, but I always focus on the drummer because you've got this person just absolutely sort of smashing their way through this instrument, and it's brilliant to watch. That's what the live performance is. And if you're watching a guitarist or a cellist, or you see this physicality with the instrument, you go and see someone perform with I have to loosely use the term electronic music, but I really mean
boxes on stage.
Quite often someone's looking down, they're looking at a control surface, they're not looking up, they're very static. And this is to me that's where there's not a problem to solve. It's not really quite how I'd say it, but that's where what we're trying to offer an alternative to.
I thought a bit about this further because I realized I watched this CHAGALL performance where she was. What occurred to me is the key distinction of what these allow you to do is that you can maintain eye contact with the audience while you are doing all of the things that make music happen. Mm-hmm. And the problem, I think that's true with knobs to a certain extent. If it's a 303, you can look up, but you have to look down to know what to grab and what to grab next. And it naturally pulls your attention away from the audience. And so that feels like the key distinction is like, and I don't know if that's necessarily what makes it successful or not. I don't know how necessary it is, but and there is a whole sort of I think if you're a performer, actually looking at the audience can be frightening in some ways. You almost maybe do prefer to retreat into yourself so you can focus on the sound. But I wonder if you can speak to you have tried these gloves. I have not tried them. What do people say and can you sort of talk about what does it feel like to look the audience in the eye while you're able to then make music as an electronic musician?
Yeah, I mean, it feels, I'm a guitarist, So it feels to me like playing guitar,
that's similar.
right?
Yeah,
Like I feel like I'm able to use the full space of around me as a way to perform, and I can move. Whereas if I'm playing, I don't want to sort of lay into like, if you've got, there's an amazing load of controllers. I don't think that we're in a world where those need to go.
I also want to be clear. I'm not getting rid of my boxes, but
yeah.
I'm just aware. It's just what the limitations and what, it's the,
Yeah.
I don't know how to quite put this, well, like without sounding pretentious, but it's the sort of the space they occupy, the things they let you do, they force you to work in a certain way. You've got to look at them, and that does change things. And also, it's the invisibility of what you're doing. Like, there's no, you might turn a dial, and hey, I'm turning a very different dial in a very different way, but the audience has no idea.
That's what I mean by transparency. So it's transparency of the action that happens and the sound that comes out. So you're able to see this movement sound connection, and you're like, that's real. I can see it.
And so what do people say when they use them? What's the sort of, you say you're a guitarist, obviously, and you've used these. Well, what does it feel like? What's the difference?
I think all artists are quite different. I mean, there are a lot of artists who, for some artists, they are like, they're very conscious of their physical presence on stage, and for them that's just a way to sort of manifest that and make it real to people, to really command attention on the stage. And actually, I play in part of a 6-piece band. To me, I did use them in that, and actually realized it's not really appropriate for that, because you kind of lose the balance of the band a bit.
You mean everyone will be like, what's that dude doing with his hands?
Yeah, with the LEDs on his hands. So but if you're an artist, or a particular single performing artist, like, quite often that's a way for you to just kind of command the stage and command interest in your performance in a way that, and people love it. They just love to see.
It feels like the visual equivalent of loopers. When you see the Ed Sheeran thing of, say what you want about Ed Sheeran, but it's like that when people hear that he says it and then it repeats, but he stopped lip syncing, you intrinsically understand what's happened, and it feels a bit like that.
Yeah, no, definitely, and obviously, like, looping is a big part of the gloves as well. We've got a lot of people building and layering things with their gloves, so we are maybe also borrowing from that as well.
So what are they? How do they work?
Okay, great. So,
is there a picture that we should?
Yeah, we've got how do MiMu gloves work?
That's good, isn't it? How do they work?
Here's one we prepared earlier.
We thought about this.
So they have flex sensors, which are basically measuring the bend of your fingers. So we're measuring the bend of your fingers in 8 different places. So your pinky and your thumb we measure with one sensor, and the other 3 fingers we measure with 2.
So is there kind of like rods or something, or like
you can actually, I'll just give you this prop that I brought. If you feel the fingers here, if you just feel the end there, you'll feel this sort of little
There's
sensor.
Like a little sort of ribbon thing.
Exactly. So that's measuring the bend of your fingers, and as you, it's really the bend of the knuckles. Let's be really more specific, right? So what we're getting then is this sort of hand movement measurement.
And is that like 5? You get 5 things? Oh no, 4.
8.
You get 8 things.
Yeah, because so the thumb and the pinky we take 1 knuckle each because they're shorter.
Yeah.
And the 3 middle fingers we take 2.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, so you've got 2 knuckles there to
I haven't
play with.
About that. Clearly. yeah. Okay.
So that's the. So if we let's go on to the next slide here, we can run through these. So then on the wrist, we're measuring sort of the orientation, right?
So is this a gyro? This is the kind of.
It's an accelerometer and a gyroscope, sort of, and that's basically measuring orientation of your hand. So this allows you, while we measure this, the bend of the fingers is capturing this small. These smaller movements. Yeah. This is capturing the big, wide body movements, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So the whole thing.
So that's all sent over computer via Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And there's a button and an LED. So
like a little pinch.
Yeah. So the buttons. Maybe you've got something like set this to be reset my frame of reference, or mute everything. Like, maybe there's some things you might want a button for sometimes. That's also an LED which can show you what mode you're in, so it can change red to green to blue.
Okay.
You can understand what's happening. We've tried to put a lot of emphasis on them being used on stage, so that it's quite warm on stage.
Sweaty palms.
Yeah, exactly.
You've probably got sweaty palms anyway, so don't.
So you can also clap because it's as a musician, and then you've got fingerless. So in the next slide, I think, they're fingerless because we've got a lot of people who play guitar with them, play piano with them.
How does that work if you play guitar? Like, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of it. I want to ask you about this, like, what the application.
Sure. And then we've got a vibration motor which gives you some haptic feedback, so you can set up this to notify you if something happens in your software, and you can really program that to do whatever you want.
You've received an email. Stop the performance.
I mean, you can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you can check your email on stage. That's good.
You can, yeah.
And you can probably type as well.
And this is the software Glover. So all of that data that the Glover is measuring goes into via Wi-Fi, is captured by this software, and this is a space for a musician to basically compose their relationship between gesture, so like what movements am I making on the one hand, and what sounds do I want to control on the other.
Okay.
And this is done. So basically, this is sending MIDI out, or OSC if you wanted to do that. And these messages mean that basically each artist can compose their relationship between gesture and sound in their own way. So you can imagine another version of the gloves, which it just everything's hard coded, and this always does loop, and this is, and you can imagine like you'd see the first performance with the gloves, that was cool, and then the second one you'd be like, this is insanely boring.
Dude's doing the same thing every time. Yeah.
This allows them to create their own kind of relationship, and then not just create their own one, but create loads of them and switch between them in real time during the show. So some of the artists are switching to between 20 and 30 different configurations in one show.
Yeah. Okay.
So they can really go to town on this.
You can basically make it so that those gestures are just the sort of, they're the keys on the keyboard, and you can make them do anything basically.
Exactly.
I see. I mean, this is a bit of a loaded question. You will say easy, but how easy is it actually to set all that stuff up? And kind of, my only immediate thought is that seems like it would be quite a rabbit hole. And how accessible have you been able to make it so that people can actually, do use it and do come up with lots of gestures that they can learn? And you've obviously got to learn them, haven't you? You can't. It's clearly there's a bit of a headspace you have to get into.
Yeah, I think it's very drag and drop. So you drag and drop a gesture, and then you drag and drop a MIDI message, and then you connect them together with a chord. It's very user friendly.
You try it. And does this then float? Sort of, if you have Ableton Live, for example, do you just have this open at the same time, and then in Live you choose MiMu or Glover as an interface input?
Exactly that. So this sits as a standalone piece of software.
Yeah.
And then it basically pretends to be a connected MIDI device, and then you can just map to what any of the MIDI commands are. So,
okay. And so what sort of things can you do? Like what sort of chains? This is the kind of questions. What do people set up MiMu Govs to do? So
there's lots of different kind of, I guess, categories of artists. So you've got the vocalists, and they're wanting to put loads of effects on their voice. So they're using gesture to control, let's say, harmonies, bringing in harmonies, changing.
Just sorry to interrupt you. That's what CHAGALL, I saw she was doing. She was using, I think, her fingers. Was she to like change? I think
she's changing the harmony that she would have been using.
And then she used her left hand to do the kind of theremin conductor's swell with a kind of beautiful kind of pad. Mm-hmm. But it seemed, and I assumed, that the pad is being also kind of MIDI quantized with the fingers. So the fingers do her voice, so she's singing and it's harmonizing, and she's also swelling the pad, and presumably the fingers control both the pad and the effect on her voice at the same time, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is because this is programmable by the artist, like I have no idea what she's doing. Yeah. So I love it. I see people performing, and I'm like, I have no idea how they're doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you've got the vocalists. They're doing all of reverb, harmonies, delays, all kinds of things on their voice. Then you've got instrumentalists. So we've got for example, we've got a guy called Ralph Schmidt. His artist name's Pianuk. He's got 2 back-to-back grand pianos. And he's using the gloves to control effects on those 2 pianos this is in Freiburg in Germany.
Absolutely brilliant. So so he's playing 2 pianos at once.
Yeah.
But he's wearing the gloves while he plays.
Yeah.
And what does it do? Do you know? That one, do you know?
I have no idea.
But what does it sound like? Is it?
So he's running quite often like the piano sound into there, and he's like capturing it and making loops of the piano and adding effects to things like that. Yeah. So,
I imagine there's I'm conscious there's a new company, sorry to sort of mention them. What is it? Basically, there's another company I've seen that have got a kind of beam-based controller where and I start to see that there are gestures you do where you play the keyboard and you lift your hands. And I can imagine there's a kind of, it's pretty nuts. You can come up with your own sort of gestural language, as it may be, your own way of working.
So I've used it with the piano, I've normally have my left hand, and that would open up, for example, like a big droney reverb world. So I could play something and I lift up that hand and all of the piano sound goes into this big kind of long cavern. Exactly.
Yeah, so you sort of end with it like, woof, you know, into infinity. Yeah, that's nice.
So yeah, also with the instrumentalists are the guitarists, for example. I've seen someone with a saxophone with the gloves, which is really cool.
What is it doing? You know, what does it sound like? Is it just effects? Is it?
Yeah, so I think
every bend is doing something. Every note change.
It depends on every case, but the key thing there with the instruments is that the instrument is going through, let's say, Ableton Live or something like that, and then they're adding some effects or looping the sound of their instrument. They're augmenting the instrument in some way.
Yeah. I wonder, how fast is it? What's the latency?
So we've measured sort of a round trip time of like about 5 milliseconds.
Okay.
So
what's the factoid about how long is 5 milliseconds? You know, how far does sound travel in? Isn't it like sound travels about a meter in 3 milliseconds? Is that correct? I think that's something. Please correct me.
Something like that, yeah.
Which is to say that's quite short. And is it perceptible? How connected does it feel? I know MIDI has its own limitations as well.
So in terms of psychoacoustics, you have it depends on the sound, because very percussive sounds will be a shorter kind of recognizable delay time than other types of sounds. But after about 10, 15, 20 milliseconds, that starts to become noticeable.
A drum, you notice.
Yeah.
And obviously swells could be
swells could be, you could probably get away with half a second.
Yeah, completely. Okay. That's interesting. So I just mean, you know, does it feel pretty instant and doesn't, I presume it does, like it doesn't feel weird or...
I mean, if the big caveat here is, are you in a good environment? So we also, I mean, we've put a lot of time into the Wi-Fi communications to make sure that we're using, you know, a really good kind of high bandwidth Wi-Fi channel where you're able to
connect directly to your computer. Or do you have to have a router or something?
So the gloves can serve their own Wi-Fi network, which allows your computer can just connect to the gloves Wi-Fi network. Right. That's a convenience, and that's sort of how we ship them. But we suggest to everybody get a router, and make sure that that's got a decent amount of signal, and then connect your gloves to that and your computer to that. That sounds
the best
a bit
way. Like in VR, there's a lot of kind of like the untethered VR. There's a lot of people that would say, you get a decent router and it can be very fast. And that's VR exactly. Where there's like an insane amount of throughput and, you know, similar types of technology, because it's obviously translating your hands and your head, and it's also then beaming, you know, high quality video back to your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
What are the other sort of, can you think of some other interesting applications that you've seen of these? What else do people do with them?
So a couple of other interesting areas are, so people controlling sort of live visuals and so touch designer, Resolume. We've talked about CHAGALL. She's got a sort of LED show that she's touring around with. She's controlling all of these LEDs behind her. So that's a really like interesting space. Another one is people are, and I don't know much about it actually, I'm honest, but spatial audio is becoming a huge thing with the gloves, as you're able to pan sounds around a space and kind of you become the sort of conductor of sound. Which is really cool.
I also saw, did Imogen Heap she did a thing with visuals as well, where it's like,
I mean, like
body exploding and collapsing behind it.
Nearly everything with the gloves Imogen has done first.
Of course. Can you talk a bit, I mean, that's the sort of cue to talk about her journey as well with this, and her involvement, and what was it solving for her? Why did these get in, and how did she invent these?
Sure. So from her perspective, she had all these different, she's a multi-instrumentalist, and she's got all these different things on stage, and she's sort of running between one station and another station to do something. And then as we've talked about, I think some of those sort of stations, the clue's in the name, they're stationary, and they're not that visible of what she's doing. And she just wanted a way to be able to go in and sort of grab and take a sound and then sort of shape it with her hands and make that very visible and obvious to the audience. So I think there was partially for her the visibility of control, and partially this trying to bring her kind of box of tricks into one thing that was right at her fingertips, so she could just perform again.
Like you don't have to pick something up every time. It's just your hands, right? Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, and it's a visibility thing. And so, how was it? How were they developed? Like, how did it work? Yeah,
so Imogen sort of had this sort of light bulb moment about the gloves. She's like, "This is what I want to do," and she decided she was going to. We have some slides here. Let's. So this is Imogen. And Imogen sort of got in touch with someone called Tom Mitchell at the University of the West of England, and they did a sort of initial. They were looking at using something called a 5DT glove, and they wrote some software to control music, and it could do sort of the finger movement, but none of these gestures and that kind of thing.
Swoops and whoops.
So yeah, this is Tom.
Yeah.
And then Imogen was like, okay, right, we need to expand this. And she started to pull a wider group of people around. So we have like a textile designer, electronics engineer. I came in at that point, this is about 14 years ago. And we were all, nip on a little bit more? So yeah, we were all sort of sitting around, and we were preparing for this performance that Imogen was going to do live streamed from her garden, basically.
Yeah.
And we were just had like 2 months to get it to work. And if we keep going, so we're sort of soldering there and making things in place. This is in 2012, and then this was what we ended up kind of coming up with for Imogen. So the gloves at that point were like a whole bodysuit. Yeah. So there's like a battery pack and data receiving area on the back, and that ran down with wires to the hands here. And we all had to kind of, it needed like 4 or 5 people to sort of dress Imogen in this suit and to get it to work.
This reminds me of those amazing things of the human central nervous system when it's been sort of extracted from a body. It's like so complicated and kind of, I mean, and obviously what we have now is just the gloves, right? Is it worse in some way, or is it similar in terms of what it does? Is there anything that this does, or is there anything that's sort of missing, as it were, from the gloves as they are now?
No. Yeah. I mean, I love this. It's beautiful. Yeah. But there's the gloves are superior to this in every way. Yeah. Battery life, communication. So this was Bluetooth. We discovered that Bluetooth on stage in any sort of environment is unworkable.
Bluetooth back. Yeah. Why is that? Is it just doesn't work, or it does range, or
it's sitting in a part of the wireless spectrum that's incredibly busy.
Right.
And the same is true of sort of 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi.
So like even here on this terrace, there's like 20 Wi-Fi networks.
Yeah. So this becomes a bit of a thing that if you're performing with the gloves, you have to get used to just setting up a few things. So we've got some diagnostic tools in the software that show you what's happening with the communications.
Yeah.
And you can then change the Wi-Fi channel and find a nice spot, basically.
Nice. Is there anything else you want to say about this?
Only that it was just a really, quite a beautiful process. I didn't get any sleep, as far as I remember, when we were doing this, and it was just really exciting. If we go to the next slide, so this, and this was the original software, right. and it was in Max MSP.
Yeah,
at least this component of it.
I love that there's a value called Secret Thumb.
Yes, so Secret Thumb is so we've got Secret Thumb is this. So so that's like a gesture.
Spot the thumb.
And this would be Secret Finger.
Oh yeah, Secret Finger.
So so you need these different gestures, and this is the only grainy photo I have. So apology for the quality, but this is Imogen performed in her garden with this sort of reactive thing we called, this is a bolero, and we were just making it for her at this time.
Yeah,
and she loved doing it, but then everyone who saw it, I was like, wow, that's like, how can I try this? And we just got this flood of emails that came in afterwards. And we kind of realized that we have to sort of make these for other people beyond Imogen. And if we could just nip on a little bit. So we went through a whole range of different, so from Imogen's one to a range of different glove designs and sort of iterating through. And over time, we eventually kind of came up with, so this sort of, we went through this big R&D process. We came up with like a manufacturable textile. We redesigned the glove electronics. We did some industrial design. There's enormous amount of software development. Yeah. We've made some nice packaging.
Over 4 years.
And eventually in 2019, we kind of released this version 1 of the gloves.
Yeah.
And then we've just literally finished version 2.
Okay.
And so they're now sitting sort of here. This is sort of the small, I'm really proud of it. It's sort of,
how much is a glove or a pair of gloves?
Yeah, so a pair of gloves is in British pounds, 2,699
for a pair.
For a pair. I always want to tell someone that they're £99 or something, but like I know that from what goes into making these, the effort, like there's so much, like their hand. If you have a look here, you can see that all the sensors are hand stitched in. Yeah. They're done here, like in this building, and it's very labor intensive.
And it's also just, there's just not an alternative. There's not another, glove that you can get, is there? You'd have to make your own. So.
Yeah, there are ways to make it cheaper. Like we could replace the Wi-Fi communications with a Bluetooth module, for example, that's more sort of off the shelf.
But that may affect reliability.
Exactly. So it would work great in your bedroom, and then you go on stage and it would fail. And this is the sort of thing we don't want to happen.
I suppose then the final questions are really, we were talking, obviously we started this conversation talking about the existing kind of world of controllers and knobs and buttons and faders and all these things that are still get put in devices. And we saw that things like the D-Beam from Roland was in it, but they don't put it in their products anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a kind of novelty factor that is associated with kind of some gestural things. Things like the D-Beam are actually ridiculed. They're thought of as sort of joke type things because, there's a sort of hands in the air sort of DJ association, which is come to have negative connotations. I think that's really harmed the development of odder, i.e. just more unusual, new novel ways of controlling things. And so the question really is, how do you see the way forward for things like this? Because for this to become mainstream and obviously then to get cheaper than it is now, it has to be more widely adopted. Mm-hmm. And what do you see the way forward for things like this? What's the way forward where more people will use and accept these? What has to happen?
Yeah, I'll just say so that those reactions are we get lots of people who go, wow, it's amazing. Yeah. But the negative reactions are either this is fake or it's AI.
Really?
Or they're miming, or we get this is stupid. Why don't you use real music technology or something like that? And I just think that's fine. Those people can have those opinions, and I think the only way if we can't change your mind on it, you don't have to use it. There's loads of other stuff, and go for it. But like when we've noticed that we get sort of people going out there doing things with the gloves that, again, we don't know how they do them because they're programming it themselves, and they become role models and they show other people how they can do things. And this kind of has led to lots of kind of interest in the gloves, it might be a spatial audio thing. So someone goes out and does a spatial audio thing and someone else sees that. Yeah. And it starts to build that awareness of what they can do that maybe other things can't. But if someone really just, thinks it's, a bit naff, then that's fine.
But this is the thing. What I worry is that clearly it's a thing that's really well considered, does so much. It's that kind of closed-minded thinking that we need to try and sort of open up somehow. And perhaps if you watch the CHAGALL performance and watch Imogen Heap perform with these things, you start to see oh man, it's nuts. You can look people in the eye. Mm-hmm. And I think people may have to be brave, performers may have to be brave to do that, because especially if you're an electronic music performer, you perhaps don't have an instrument per se. Your instrument is playing the filter, and it requires a bit of headspace and training, and then bravery on your part to go and look people in the eye as you're performing to them. Because I think there is that sort of fear of the looking down. The good bit is that you're not seeing whether people are at the bar or whether they're dancing or not. And so it's a hard gulf, but I think it's really cool. And Adam, thank you for telling us about this today.
Thank you very much.